Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're diving into Carl Rogers's A Way of Being.
You shared this book with us,
Mhm.
and I can see why it's not just like some dry psychology text, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's Rogers reflecting on his life, his work, sharing those aha moments that
Mm.
shaped his whole view of human potential.
It's remarkable. I mean, this book feels like you're having a conversation with Rogers.
Yeah, it does, and I think that that's what's so valuable about it. Whether you're a therapist, a teacher, a parent, or even just curious about human nature,
Mm.
there are insights here that can resonate with anyone. One thing that struck me early on was how Rogers seemed genuinely surprised by the impact of his
Hmm.
ideas. Here's this quiet psychologist whose work ended up touching so many lives all over the world. What do you think contributed to that?
Well, you could say it was an idea whose time had come. You
Hmm.
know, Rogers was tapping into something fundamental, a
Hmm.
real hunger for a different way of seeing ourselves and our
Hmm.
relationships.
Hmm. Like his ideas provided a new framework
Hmm.
for understanding human potential just when the world was ready for it.
That makes a lot of sense. I keep thinking about that analogy he uses of the pebble and the pond.
Hmm.
Rogers drops this idea into the world, and the ripples just spread out further than anyone could have imagined.
Yeah, and those ripples
Yeah,
weren't always welcomed.
right.
He faced a lot of pushback, particularly in the early days.
Especially when he went up against that established expert model of therapy.
Right.
I love that analogy he uses about feeling like he was running a garage
Yeah.
where people brought their problems to be fixed, by him as the extant mechanic. It seems so counter to how we think about therapy now.
It really does. It flips the script. One story that illustrates this shift beautifully
Hmm.
is the one Rogers tells about the mother who came to him concerned about her son's behavior.
Okay, this sounds intriguing. Tell me more.
So, as the mother opened up, it became clear that her own struggles were at the heart of the issue. And this prompted Rogers to question that whole therapist as expert dynamic. What if, instead of offering solutions, he simply focused on deeply listening
Hmm.
and understanding the client's experience?
That seems so basic, yet I imagine it was pretty revolutionary at the time.
Absolutely. It challenged the power structure
Yeah.
inherent in that traditional therapist-client relationship. And this realization paved the way for Rogers to articulate those three core conditions for growth: genuineness, acceptance, and empathy.
I'm curious, for professionals trained to be in control, to have the answers, weren't these conditions kind of a radical departure from the norm?
They were, and I think that's why they're still so relevant today. Think about empathy for a moment. What does it truly mean to step into someone else's world
Yeah.
and see things through their eyes?
Yeah.
It's not about agreement or condoning actions. It's about striving to understand their feelings and experiences without judgment. It's a powerful concept, but not an easy one.
You're right. And Rogers delves into this beautifully when he discusses the case of Ellen West, a woman wrestling with identity and those societal pressures.
Ellen's story tragically demonstrates what can happen when we deny our true selves. That pressure to conform led her to create a false self to meet external expectations, ultimately resulting in a profound sense of loneliness and despair.
It's heartbreaking, but is it possible that this kind of loneliness is more widespread in our modern world than we realize?
I think it's very likely. We live in a culture that often prioritizes fitting in over authentic self-expression,
Right.
which can make it incredibly challenging to embrace who we truly are.
And that's where Rogers' work with groups comes in, right?
Exactly.
He wasn't just focused on individual therapy. He envisioned communities built on these same principles. But these weren't your typical group therapy sessions.
Right.
Rogers described these large workshops as dynamic and unpredictable, almost chaotic at times, with intense emotions surfacing and breakthroughs happening in unexpected ways. He mentions the initial discomfort people felt, like they were thrown in the deep end without a life preserver.
Yeah,
But then something remarkable would emerge.
it's fascinating. By fostering an environment where vulnerability and authenticity were encouraged, a collective wisdom seemed to arise organically.
That sounds inspiring, but also a bit mysterious. How did these groups actually operate? What lessons can we draw from them?
Well, to understand that, we need to explore the concept of emergence,
Yeah.
which is what we'll dive into next.
Okay, emergence. That sounds like something straight out of a science fiction novel.
It might sound complex, but it's actually quite intuitive. In the context of Rogers' groups, emergence refers to the idea that collective wisdom arises organically from the interactions and contributions
Yeah.
of the individual members. Think of it like a flock of birds, each bird responding to its neighbors, yet together they create these intricate, almost choreographed patterns of flight.
So there's no designated leader
Yeah,
or predetermined structure,
right.
but the group's intelligence just emerges from the individual contributions.
That's the beauty of it. It relies heavily on the principle of personal responsibility. Individuals are encouraged to own their experiences, articulate their needs, and actively participate in shaping the group's direction.
That sounds both empowering and a bit terrifying. I can imagine feeling a lot of pressure to, like, perform or say the right thing in that kind of setting.
That's a natural concern. But Rogers emphasized that the goal isn't to achieve a specific outcome or force a solution. It's about showing up authentically in each moment, trusting that by bringing our genuine selves to the group, we contribute to something larger than ourselves.
So it's less about individual performance and more about the collective energy and
Mhm.
honesty.
Precisely. And this connects beautifully to Rogers' vision for the future. He talked about the qualities needed to thrive in a world of constant change and uncertainty, a world that, in many ways,
Yeah.
we're living in right now.
What kind of qualities are we talking about? What does this person of tomorrow look like?
Rogers highlighted traits like openness to new experiences,
Mm-hmm.
authenticity in communication, and a healthy skepticism toward technology. Qualities that we see reflected in the individuals who participated in these groups. They're not afraid to question assumptions
Mhm.
or challenge the status quo.
It's like they're pioneers, blazing a trail in a world that's constantly shifting.
That's a fantastic way to put it.
Mm.
Rogers even suggested that this new way of being might be crucial for humanity's survival.
Wow.
He saw a direct link between the principles that foster individual growth and those that could lead to a more just and sustainable world.
So it's not just about personal development, it's
Yeah.
about contributing to a larger societal shift.
Exactly. Rogers believed that genuineness, acceptance, and empathy, the very conditions that allow individuals to flourish, could also transform our relationships, our institutions, and our approach to global challenges.
That's a powerful idea. But I have to ask, are we seeing any signs of this person of tomorrow emerging today?
It's a question Rogers grappled with himself. He saw glimmers of hope in the social movements of his time, the growing interest in personal growth, and a rising awareness of our interconnectedness. He wasn't just a dreamer. He saw his ideas taking root in the real world.
So he believed change was possible.
He did, but he also acknowledged the immense challenges. He knew that the dominant culture often resists change, especially when it threatens established power structures and ways of thinking.
He talks about how this person of tomorrow will face opposition from those who cling to the old ways, who believe that power equals right, and progress is measured solely by material wealth and technological advancement.
It's a struggle that continues to this day. We see it in the resistance to social justice movements, the pushback against addressing the environmental crisis, and the widening gap between the haves and have-nots.
So where does that leave us? If Rogers' vision is unfolding, what role can we play in shaping this new world?
That's the million-dollar question. And I think Rogers would say the first step is to cultivate these qualities within ourselves, to embrace openness, authenticity, and empathy in our own lives and relationships, to become, in essence, the change we wish to see.
That's a powerful call to action, but it can feel overwhelming. Where do we even begin?
We can start by engaging with the principles outlined in A Way of Being. Explore what it means to truly listen to others,
Yeah.
to accept ourselves and others unconditionally, and to be fully present in each moment. It's a process, not a destination.
But we don't have to do this alone.
Right.
Rogers' work with groups shows the importance of community in this journey.
Absolutely. Rogers saw community as a vital catalyst for both personal and societal transformation. Coming together in authentic and supportive ways can create a collective force for good, a ripple effect that can spark positive change.
It sounds like a positive feedback loop, individual growth fueling collective action, which in turn fosters a more supportive environment for further growth.
Exactly. And as we engage in this process, it's crucial to remember that we're not striving for some perfect utopia. It's about embracing the journey, the inherent messiness of human interaction, and the constant potential for growth and evolution.
That's such a hopeful perspective. If Rogers were alive today, what do you think he would make of our current world? With all its technological advancements, social and political upheavals, and this growing awareness of our interconnectedness, I imagine he'd have a lot to say.
I think he'd be both fascinated and concerned. The rapid pace of change, the complexity of the challenges we face, the divisions that threaten our collective well-being. These would undoubtedly weigh on him.
But he was such an optimist, I think he'd also see immense opportunity.
I agree. He'd likely encourage us to embrace the unknown, to experiment with new ways of being and relating, and to trust that, even amidst chaos and uncertainty, we can create a more just and fulfilling world for ourselves and future generations.
What resonates most with you from Roger's work? What's sticking with you as we wrap up this deep dive?
For me, it's the profound power of simply being present with another person, truly listening, striving to understand, and offering acceptance without judgment. It's a skill that can transform our relationships, our communities, and ourselves.
That's beautifully put. And it reminds me of something Roger said that's been echoing in my mind throughout this whole exploration. He said, the most personal is the most universal.
Mm.
It's powerful, right? That idea that the most personal is the most universal.
Yeah.
By embracing our own unique experiences and perspectives, we tap into a shared humanity that connects us all.
It's such a profound insight. It challenges us to move past those superficial differences that divide us and recognize the common ground that unites us as human beings.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes A Way of Being such a timeless and relevant book. It speaks to those core human needs for connection, for meaning, for growth. Needs that transcends any particular time or culture.
It reminds us that building a better world starts within each of us by nurturing those qualities of openness, authenticity, and empathy. We embody the change we want to see in the world.
That's a really empowering message. But before we go, I want to leave you with one last thought-provoking question to consider.
Okay.
If Rogers's vision for the future is unfolding, if this person of tomorrow is emerging, what role will you play? What unique gifts and perspectives can you bring to the table?
That's a great question.
I encourage you to revisit A Way of Being, explore more of Roger's work, and most importantly, keep having those meaningful conversations with yourself and others. Those are the conversations that can spark real, lasting change.
And remember, even small steps can make a difference. Embrace the unknown, trust the process, and never underestimate the power of your own authenticity to create positive change.
That wraps up our deep dive into Carl Rogers' A Way of Being. We hope you've enjoyed exploring these ideas with us. Until next time, keep questioning, keep discovering, and keep diving deep.